Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Today we're joined by Ann Grabowski, a longtime Democratic Party, Dawn, all kinds of things, activist. We're going to learn more about Ann's very rich life in a bit, but first let me welcome you to Democratic Television.
Hi, Steve.
How's it going?
It's going just fine. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Kind of enjoying the summer.
It's been nice.
So, Ann, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Interesting pets along the way that you want to share?
So I grew up in the Central Valley in a little, very small town right outside of Fresno, California. Grew up on a farm with a younger brother and two parents, and decided that that wasn't the lifestyle for me any longer. So I moved to San Jose to attend San Jose State about 8 years ago now.
Oh. So when you were growing up in the little farm community, did you have any mentors or people that you looked up to? Was Cesar Chavez big in your family or not big in your family?
He was big in half of my family, but not in the other. We were grape farmers, and I learned to count by counting the raisin trays that had been laid out. And my mother was an exceptional woman, is an exceptional woman, and she treated the farm workers that we did have with such care. I always look back and remember how she would make a large spaghetti dinner. Even though that wasn't necessarily culturally sensitive to them, that's what she knew how to make. And every Monday night, they had a spaghetti dinner. My father, on the other hand, wasn't so compassionate and didn't teach the lessons of Cesar Chavez in a good way. But I still learned how important it was to treat people that worked and produced with great care and respect.
Okay, a little social justice aspect at a young age.
Yes.
So we found some early influences.
Very early.
Any other influences as you were growing up? Many people cite John Kennedy as a big influence. I think that was probably a little bit before your time.
Just a little bit. Actually, one of the biggest influences in my early years was Rush Limbaugh, strangely enough. And the Girl Scouts. My mother had the foresight to put me in Girl Scouts at a young age, and of course the Girl Scouts teach compassion and respect and integrity. So I took those lessons to heart very much. And it didn't seem to be in keeping with the Girl Scouts that I would listen to Rush Limbaugh on talk radio when my father would pick me up from that activity. So one day I told my dad that I couldn't be whatever political party Rush Limbaugh was because he was so mean, and Girl Scouts taught me not to be mean. And he said, well, that's Republicans, and that's what we are. And I said, well, then I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to be a Democrat.
Wow.
And he said, well, Democrats don't live in my house. Now, my father, who was a labor construction worker, a labor union construction worker, had built me a 2-story tree house when I was very young. And so I moved out for 2 days, out from under his roof, and I went and I lived in the tree house that my union father built for me because I wanted to be a Democrat.
Well, that's great. Both of them are strong influences for varying reasons.
Yes.
Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
So you grew up in the Valley, came to San Jose, went to San Jose State University. What did you pursue?
I pursued a number of majors like most college students do, but I ultimately graduated with a double degree in behavioral science and sociology, and I picked up a minor in public administration.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
So what was your employment career like? Where did you find jobs, interesting jobs?
For the longest time, this dyslexic girl worked at the budget office for the San Jose State College of Education, and really got to know and understand the strifes of the teachers at the university at that time, but also how the organization ran, became very familiar with the university system, and then moved on to be elected by the student body to be a representative at the California State Student Association. And that took me everywhere from the chancellor's office in Long Beach and protesting fee increases to the state capitol lobbying members of the legislature. And that was an interesting move. And on the weekends, sometimes I folded shirts at Ann Taylor Loft and sold blouses and paid for school almost completely on my own.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
So at some point, the political bug got a little stronger than just moving out of your father's house and 8 feet in the air.
Yes. I think I've always been someone that has believed that political systems are meant to do good. Always. I can't remember a time when that wasn't something that was ingrained in my life and culture and outlook. But my first real activist role, other than being the student site council president in 4th grade, was really to be elected at San Jose State and to be involved in the campus community, to lobby our own administrators on issues of safety around campus, but also the longevity and the sustainability of our fee structure for students through the chancellor and through the legislature. That's when I really took my own message that I had shared with people and took it a little bit further than, my bedroom walls where I'd talk to friends.
Right. You now work for an elected official.
I do.
What made you want to have that experience? Was it the person? Was it the opportunity? Was it the incredible salary structure?
I can tell you it wasn't the incredible salary structure, but it was the opportunity, and it was also the elected official. I work as the transportation and environment staffer for council member Don Rocha out of San Jose, and he's an incredible, progressive, reasonable man. And he's excellent to watch work and to understand, and he's taught me a lot. It was also the opportunity to find the balance between the administrative side of government and the public policy development, and the legislative side of government and the implementation. And so being able to ask very important questions of our administration and hear from our community, and also be able to do fun things like National Night Out and engage with our neighbors and find simple solutions to problems that plague them was an excellent mixing pot for me.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I know that you've been involved in some community organizations too. Would you share a little bit about that?
Currently, I just assumed the role of the chair of the County Commission on the Status of Women. And right now we have a very large work plan. Our 15 commissioners are doing a lot of work in the areas of health and wellness for women, looking at what we need to do as a county to make sure the Affordable Care Act is implemented properly with proper access points in the county. We're doing a lot with incarcerated women, trying to ensure that they're treated fairly and equitably while they're serving their sentences at Elmwood Women's Facility in the county. We're also doing some work on equal pay and education opportunities for women. And we're moving forward to have one of our large fundraisers of the year because we're a self-sustaining commission. We fund ourselves. So doing that, and also looking statewide at what some of our statewide issues are and communicating those with the California Commission on the Status of Women is keeping me fairly busy. But right now, as you know, we're moving into the endorsements phase for our November elections, and my affiliation with the Democratic Activists for Women now is keeping me very busy on implementing our endorsement process and hearing from candidates about what their plans are.
The endorsement process at the local level is a real big deal. There are so many people that need to pay more attention, in my opinion, and there are so many races when you consider not just the obvious Board of Soups and City Council, but all the school board races and some of the special districts. You must have your hands full.
Quite full, overflowing. But we're looking at about 110 races that are going to be happening in November, and the Democratic Activists for Women now, shortly known as DAWN, is very interested in and engaged in getting more women to run for office. We have a decent showing in the Valley, but we still need to have more to achieve any kind of parity with men, and women tend to be more hesitant to run for office. So we're engaging them, especially at the school board level, where they have a full understanding of their education systems, mostly because their children are involved, and moving from there.
So what would a school board look like that were maybe dominated by women, or a city council? How do you think that would be different qualitatively?
You know, that's hard to say because I don't ever want to appear biased against men. But I do think that, for example, we have 3 women on the San Jose City Council now. And some of the questions that they ask are exceptionally thoughtful, and they come from a different perspective and a different angle than men do. They ask more questions instead of seeking a political end than some of the men on the council. And I don't mean to say that the men aren't thoughtful.
No, it was a loaded question, not
but-
meant to be, but
Sure. But I think that women have some great kind of intrinsic qualities in finding a peaceful solution, maybe, and maybe one that's not so political. And I really think that that's what our constituents are asking for, especially in the Bay Area, is less politics and more solutions.
and certainly when we look at the national or state level and we look at the leadership there, male-dominated,
Yes.
strife, inability to work together, inability to think of the larger common good.
Sure. So we're hoping that those women that we foster at a local level and in our school boards will understand that they are capable and they are just as important to step up and be involved as men are. And we need to foster them and develop them and help them to be supported throughout, hopefully, careers in public service, because the ones that we do have are exceptional, and they are true public servants instead of politicians.
What's the distinction in your mind?
I think someone who is willing to listen and who is actively engaged in their community and is looking to have a larger, less political agenda, but more of a common sense, rational agenda, is a public servant. Somebody that at the end of the day answers to their constituents. And unfortunately, I think especially on a national level, and we're fairly lucky in the Bay Area, but at least on a national level, we have people that are much more interested in seeking endorsement contributions and campaign contributions and fostering legislation based on that than they are about answering to their constituents.
Well, that raises a whole bunch of questions, and so
Sure.
guess what? We're going to take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, lots more to talk about.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese, and one of the things that people ask me all the time is, how can I get involved? How can I make a difference? I have people contact me, constituents, who say, I'm ready to be involved more with my community. What do you recommend? Well, one of the things I would recommend is getting involved with the local Democratic Party. It's not only something that you can and should do as a Democrat, but it can be something very inspiring. This is the party that stands up for people most in need, and they can certainly use your help. As an elected official, I know that. As a Democratic activist in my own right, I know that you can make a difference by being involved on a day-to-day basis with our local Democratic Party. Want to know how to contact them? Do it by phone, 408-445-9500, or go to their website, www.sccdp.org. Your local Democratic Party, a great place to get involved.
Welcome back to Democratic Television and our guest, Ann Grabowski. And we've talked about a number of things, but I know this November there's going to be some serious stuff on the ballot. One of them is Proposition 32. What is that called again?
They're calling it the Special Exemptions Act.
Special exemptions. And what does that mean? And can you describe a little bit about the Special Exemptions Act and why the Democratic Party is urging people to vote no?
Sure. Well, I think the best place to start when describing the act is really to understand where it came from. And the origin of this act, it was a proposition that was filed with the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office by the leading lawyers for the Republican Party.
Oh.
So you might wonder why they're getting involved. And for further context, we see that the Lincoln Club of Orange County, which was a leading factor in having the Citizens United case move forward in the horrible ways that it has and how it's affected our election process. So those are the people that are behind Proposition 32, the Special Exemptions Act. Now the act moves and brands itself as a campaign contribution reform act, and it says that it prohibits both corporations and employee unions from taking taking payroll deductions from their employees' paychecks to contribute to any political activity whatsoever, any candidates, any initiatives, anything and everything. There's two main problems that I see with an explanation that some people would think is probably reasonable. But when you dig deeper, you realize that there's never been a corporation that has ever contributed politically based on payroll deductions from their employees. They use their discretionary funds to do so. So when you look at that ban, essentially through the proposition, that only impacts labor unions, which as Democrats, it doesn't matter what the organization is, though we are friendly with labor unions, it's about equity. So we already see a red flag, probably our second red flag there, the first being that this is coming out of the Republican Party. And then also as we move forward and look at it, there are hundreds of groups that aren't considered to be corporations. Insurance companies or insurance brokers are not corporations. Limited liability corporations, LLCs, those are not corporations. And super PACs are not corporations. So this act in its totality does have some restrictions for corporations, but it's not a balanced approach and it's not a balanced reform on political spending insofar as it completely undermines the ability for labor unions, working people, to collect money from their employees to have a voice in the political field. And corporations and super PACs and different entities that may be thought of as corporations but aren't can continue to spend millions and millions of dollars in Sacramento to do whatever it is that they want to do, with absolutely no ability for the rest of us to stand up and say that we don't think that's correct.
So this would prohibit labor unions, their members, from giving to political efforts on any level. Would they still be able to make contributions to the Democratic Party so they could use the money?
No. Individual members the Democratic Party would have to set up a super PAC to collect anything from labor unions, and labor unions wouldn't be able to give directly from payroll contributions. They would have to encourage their members to give separately and individually, and then that labor union would have to contribute to a super PAC that the Democratic Party was running, so then the Democratic Party could in turn contribute to a candidate or an initiative, which we know completely undermines the support and the velocity of any kind of political campaign or anti-campaign.
So a cynic looking at this might think this is just a way to totally neuter the Democratic Party and give that much more advantage to the Republican Party.
Yes.
I
A
guess
cynic would, and actually I think a reasonable person that can read properly would also see it that way.
Well, but yet it won't be framed that way. The supporters will say things like this was an equitable measure,
Yes.
I assume, because it, quote, hits both sides, which if you look at it, you might think, okay, it does, until you really look at it.
Right. And a person really has to be able to see that while both sides are named equally, in almost every clause of the proposition it says corporations and labor unions side by side. So a person could think that they're being treated equally, but you have to remember that corporations and labor unions operate completely differently. So while they're named equally, the effects are not equal. Corporations don't use the same tactics or measures in fundraising that labor unions do, and the opposite is true. And I think the Democratic Party would be just as upset if there was a labor union proposition going through that hindered some other group from being able to speak and gave themselves power over everyone else. And that's not what our platform stands for. We really, as Democrats, regardless of how you feel about labor, they are our ally. But our platform and one of our key beliefs is equality and access. And this act undermines that.
Well, you characterized this as being supported by people that supported Citizens United, and I think Citizens United is the greatest affront to democracy that we've ever seen, and it's a nationwide implementation that will impact the national elections, local, federal elections, and all that. But things like this have come up in California before. The right has put on measures to try to restrict labor's ability to give. So what's different about this one?
I think what's different about this one is the way that they're framing it. They are framing it as a reform measure and as an honest and comprehensive reform measure. And that's not what they've done in the past. In the past, we've understood it to be very much an attack on labor, and people understood that when they moved into the voting boxes. But really, this is something that's being billed as equal, and they're hinging on the voter sentiment that there's something broken about Sacramento and Washington. And I would agree that there's something broken, but this only exacerbates that problem.
Okay, so that sounds like a very key point. Do you know what the Democratic Party intends to do to help defeat Proposition 32?
The Democratic Party is really starting to mobilize very much. They're doing speakers bureaus across the state to have their Democratic clubs and central committees that, very much in a representative democracy make up the state platform. They're arming them with information. I think the most important thing we can do is voter education on this piece. We know that we're going to have a high Democratic turnout in November, so it's really to ensure that those voters are informed about what this means. Labor unions are also very much organizing, and while they still can, they're contributing.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a busy election in
Yes.
that sense. Let me go back to something you said earlier about being an activist student. One of the things that I notice is that the number of activists is always a minority compared to how many people are out there. How have you dealt with that, or can you deal with that besides saying, well, I'm going to do what I can to try to make a difference?
Sure. And I'll always say that I'm going to do what I can to make a difference. But I think our calling, especially for those of us that really very much identify with public service, is outreach and engagement for our friends and our loved ones and our relatives, especially those that are frankly disgusted by our political spectrum. And my tact as an activist has always been to bring people in and to talk to them very honestly about what's at stake and how we need to move forward, and to let them know that they don't have to be an activist to be involved. I think that's a key thing that we miss in our conversations a lot of the time, is we overwhelm people with information and our excitement, and we all need to be excited, but we disengage with them when they think that being involved in politics means that they have to walk precincts every Saturday like I do. And that's not true. That just means that they need to pick up on information and think thoughtfully, have values, and vote.
So maybe we're asking too much, or we're giving a sense that we're asking too much of people when we ask them to step up.
I think that might be one of our issues. People already don't want to be involved in something that they see as a little bit broken, which is politics. And then when we ask them to be involved in something broken, they think that maybe they have to be like us, and they don't. They just have to vote, and they have to vote in their best interest.
So going back a little bit more, you talked about the work you're doing on the Commission on the Status with Women and working in the jails. It's interesting to me, the folks, the women that are in jail, it seems many times for economic problems and all that. And it seems to me there would be great ability to bring about an awareness of how they can change and learn useful skills and really get it together. Do you think that's something that could be more encouraged, or that you hope the Commission looks to?
Right, and I should say that the Commission is a nonpartisan group, and it's not engaged with the Democratic Party. It's just a group of, right now it's a group of women, but we're always interested in having men join us, that are looking at the status of women in the Valley. And One of the things that we've noticed, especially through AB 109 criminal justice realignment, where the county is keeping inmates that may have otherwise gone to state prison, and that was a state effort about a year and a half ago. Especially through realignment, we aren't seeing vocational programming available for women the way that we see it available for men.
Oh, okay.
And that's of deep concern to us. There's about 400 to 500 women at Elmwood, and there is no vocational programming for them there. There are 1 or 2 education programs available, but by and large they serve their time, and we don't give them the tools to change the lifestyle that they will lead when they leave the
Got it.
facility.
Okay.
So we're becoming more engaged, and we're hoping to bring about some community partners and some change.
And you sound like a very committed and busy person. I salute you.
Thank
And
you.
would like to ask you, do you have some contact information? How would someone get hold of you if they wanted to do some local stuff? And is there a way to get hold of the No on Proposition 32 effort?
Sure. So I'm happy to speak with anybody that's looking to get engaged. And the best way to contact me is actually to go to the Democratic Activist website, which is sccdon.org.
And the No on 32?
And if you wanted to be involved in the No on 32 campaign, then you would go to stopspecialexemptions.org for more information on the campaign.
Great. Ann, thank you very much for being on Democratic Television, and have a great rest of the life
Thanks, Steve.
that will be around there soon.
Yes.
Thanks for watching Democratic Television. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. Help make a difference. Like you.